encabezado por la Unión Soviética.
I'm Rob Gowland. I'm a member of the Communist Party of Australia, member of the Central Committee of that party, and secretary of my party branch. I didn't come to the party from outside. I was born into it. My parents were in the party. My father was on the Central Committee. My mother was secretary of the party's biggest branch in Australia. So I had that sort of introduction to the party. In some ways, it was a good thing because, it gave me an appreciation of what being a party member meant and how you were supposed to behave and all that sort of thing from the earliest age. In other respects, it was a grave problem because normal people don't come into their adulthood thinking about dialectical materialism and that sort of stuff. But I was brought up to it. I thought everybody appreciated that everything flowed and that the world worked that way. It was a bit of a shock to discover when I was at uni that they didn't. Most people don't appreciate that sort of thing. So we had to do massive readjustment of one's thinking. But as a kid, it was good. It was the Cold War, so we weren't very open about everything, but I was told privately what was really going on in the world and how to behave towards people and how to be careful. Those are the days when Catholic Action, for example, would trip up lefties who were going downstairs on the bus, for example, and try to cause an accident. You had to be very careful. When I was a child, it was wartime, and we had stickers on our windows promoting the fact that we supported the war effort with war bonds, savings for war bonds. After the war, I remember some local kids pointing to them and sniggering and so on. They thought these stickers on the windows indicated that we were commies, or commos as they called us in Australia. They didn't, but they thought it did. And they thought that was very funny. I had a teacher in third class who took me aside and wanted to know if I'd been christened. And I said, I don't know. I was young when it happened, if it happened. She agreed that was probably true and let me off, which was good because I hadn't been christened, of course, and she would have been mortified to think that she had someone in her class who was not christened. As far as the party's concerned, as I say, I was brought up in the party, in the party household, but during the Cold War, so you had to be circumspect. That was the chief lesson you learned. No, I was far too young for that. They were in a very awkward position. They were in the party before the Second World War, right? So they were in the struggles for against illegality. The party was made illegal the day I was born, though the two events are not actually connected. The house was raided by the security police and that sort of thing, along with other communists, of course. The security police were singularly inept. They didn't know what they were looking for or what they should be looking for. So they went for fairly broad definitions of what was bad. One prominent party member who used to speak at the Domain regularly for years and years, he was very fond of telling the story of how they raided his place, and he had a picture of Karl Marx up on the wall in his lounge room, and the coppers said, "Who's that?" And he said, "That's my grandfather." Oh, all right, so they left him. And Karl Marx is just some old geezer as far as the coppers were concerned. But their struggles in the 1930s, of course, were against the Depression, against trying to make workers bear the brunt of the Depression, against fascism, which was rearing its head at the time. We had Australian fascists, the New Guard, people like that. So there were quite a few struggles along those lines. Communist speaker got thrown in the river up in one of the country towns in New South Wales. There was constant danger. That depends on where you're a communist. If you're a communist in a capitalist country, developed capitalist country, it's very lonely, isolated sort of position because you don't have a lot of people of like mind. The influence of the capitalist system is very strong. They have very powerful propaganda telling you this is the best of all possible worlds, etc., etc. If you're a communist in a socialist country, it's the exact reverse. You're the party in power, you're the ruling party, and the attitudes that you have towards the way people should behave and the way society is organised, that's what everybody thinks. And you are the majority, very much the majority. It's very comforting and very empowering. If you're a communist in a developing country, then you can be in extreme danger, or you can be on the side of a powerful movement of the oppressed and the working class. So what it is to be a communist, if you are taught properly, is that you are concerned with justice for those who create the wealth, who actually create it, not the ones who spend it, but the ones who create it, the working class. All wealth is created by workers. Even the richest person, everything they own has been created by workers at some stage. And those workers do not get to enjoy that wealth. They're seldom allowed to even have a look at it. It's hidden away, and it's paraded occasionally in things like television shows about the rich and famous. So you are shown what wealth can do and what wealth means to others, but not what it's going to do for you. You're allowed to dream about it. Imagine what it would be like to have that. But you are not given the opportunity to actually enjoy it because it's not yours. It belongs to another class of person. Rich people, wealthy people, the ruling class, those who are meant to rule by birth or marriage if they're lucky. To be a communist is to say that's wrong. That's not the way society should work. That's not just. That's not correct. It's not right for some people to have a lot and others to have nothing. It's not right for children to go hungry or to wallow in ignorance when education is available, denied to them because they can't afford it, that sort of thing. So a communist says that's wrong. I want to change that, and I will. I'll take part. I'll join a movement to change the world. That's what communists do. There's the challenge of understanding what you're doing. Being a communist is to be a social scientist. You have to understand what the nature of society really is, what are the forces that control it, move it, change it, how do they relate to each other. This is all scientific. And it's not the science that they teach at school, or indeed in most places. You have to learn it in the struggle and learn it from other communists. I was told at high school, the communists want to destroy the economy so that the Russians can come in and take over the country. That's I was told at high school. And they believed it. They believed it sincerely. Now, no one would say that today, because it's obviously not going to work in the modern context. The Russians aren't going to come in and take over Australia. That's not what they want to do. And anybody can see that. So what are the communists about? And that's the big surprising thing these days. People actually stop and think, oh, you're a communist. And instead of saying, oh my God, as they used to, literally used to, now they say, oh, you're a communist. Oh. And then they say, I thought you were dead. Or they say, what are you doing? What are you people about now? Why are you a communist today? As though it was totally unthinkable today. Because it's the one that understands what's making the world go round. It knows where society is headed and what the forces are that is driving it. If you work with other parties, they don't understand. They never will, because they've got cockeyed ideas about it. They're mistaken, so they'll fall into error. And who wants to deliberately fall into error? So you go with a party that's got the correct line and understands what it's trying to do. I was made director of the new reformed NFT, and I ran it for the next 10 years. National Film Theatre was a body that screened films from international film archives all over the world. Silent films, sound films, films that had not been seen here for 40 years. We didn't run anything from the Communist Party at the National Film Theatre. It was a different organisation. However, it did impinge upon us in one sense. Our chairman was also the head of the Commonwealth Film Unit. And he took me aside over lunch one day and said, I'd like to shake you. What? What have I done? He said, I've seen your file. What? What file? And he wouldn't go any further. He was like that. He wanted to keep his nose clean, but also try to warn you by subtle hints, I suppose. Of course, what he meant was he'd seen my ASIO file. Being a senior public servant in that position, he could. And I didn't really know I had an ASIO file. It was logical to assume I would, but I'd never bothered about it. I've still never seen it, if it comes to that. And I had a friend who was in the film industry, based in Melbourne, and he was very much pro-capitalist, but he gloatingly informed me when Gorbachev was leading the Soviet Union, the Cold War's over and we won. Oh, yeah, right. I don't think it's over. You haven't won yet. Communist Party does have relevance because the issues are still the same. Workers are still oppressed. Workers do not get the benefits of the work they produce. The wealth they create doesn't flow to them. All those things are still there. But how do we get across to people that this is something to fight for? Do it. Absolutely, best thing you could do. If you're sincere, if you're really thinking of joining the party because you want to make a difference, you want to lift up the downtrodden masses, help them to achieve great things, want people to be able to fulfill the possibilities inherent in being a human being, then yes, the Communist Party is the way to go.